Martin Van Buren was born on December 5th, 1782, just south of Albany, in a town called Kinderhook, New York. His father owned a tavern and an inn. He was our first president whose first language was not English. He was raised speaking Dutch, but he learned English in school and spoke it fluently. He was sort of a sloppy dresser, and while studying law, he was often criticized for his lack of attire. He took the advice of his peers and began dressing more formally. The last year of his legal studies was in New York City. Although he was in a Federalist area, he leaned towards the Democrat Republicans. He was admitted to the bar and returned to Kinderhook in 1803. On February 21st, 1807, he married Hannah Hose, who also spoke Dutch and spoke English with a noticeable accent. They had 4 children who survived. Hannah, however, would contract tuberculosis and died early on February 5th, 1819, at the age of 35. Van Buren would never marry again. Martin had a successful law practice with his half-brother, so Van Buren, being active in politics even at an early age, his law practice and his successful law practice allowed him to dabble even more in politics. Van Buren won a Senate seat in the New York Senate in 1812. He was offered a commission in the militia in 1812, but declined. During the War of 1812, he served as a special judge advocate and worked with Winfield Scott to reorganize the New York militia. Van Buren strongly supported the War of 1812. In 1815, he was elected as the New York Attorney General. He was the Attorney General and a senator simultaneously. He was re-elected to the New York Senate in 1816. Van Buren believed in expanding voting rights, but only to people who owned land. In 1821, he was elected to the U.S. Senate. Van Buren actually liked a two-party system. He felt that each parties bounced off each other and it would sort of keep everything in check. He resigned his Senate seat after he was elected to the governorship of New York in 1828. He only served as governor for approximately 3 months. Andrew Jackson appointed him to be the Secretary of State. As Secretary of State, he faced no serious crises. He settled the conflict with France over the dispute about financial settlements from when France was seizing American assets during the Napoleonic Wars. He also gained access to the Black Sea from the Ottoman Empire, as well as gaining access to trade in the West Indies from Britain. Jackson appointed him to be the ambassador to Britain, but the vote failed in the Senate. The vote in the Senate was tied, but his vice president, John Calhoun, actually voted against his nomination. Jackson would drop Calhoun as his vice president in 1832 and install Martin Van Buren instead. As vice president, Martin Van Buren's tenure as a vice president was, like most others, extremely uneventful. In the election of 1836, Van Buren faced several contenders. The Whig Party was not unified, so they came up with a unique strategy. They ran several regional candidates, hoping to stop Van Buren from getting the majority of electoral votes and throw the election to the House of Representatives. 148 electoral votes were needed to win. The candidates running against Van Buren were Hugh Lawson White of Tennessee, who was a senator, William Henry Harris of Ohio, a senator amongst many other political positions, Daniel Webster of Massachusetts, a senator, and William Pearson, a senator from North Carolina. The Whig strategy almost worked. Van Buren won Pennsylvania only by 4,000 votes. Van Buren received over 700,000 popular votes, 170 electoral votes, and he won 15 states. William Henry Harrison received 73 electoral votes, a little over 500,000 popular votes, and won 7 states. Daniel Webster received 14 electoral votes, won 1 state, and received only 41,000 popular votes. William Pearson Magnum received 11 electoral votes, won 1 state, but he received no popular votes because he was not on a ballot of any state that actually had a popular vote. Van Buren took over the presidency right when the Panic of 1837 began. This economic downturn was actually caused by Jackson and his war against the National Bank. There is a fair amount of evidence to show that the banks purposely tried to tank the economy in order to stop Jackson from reducing their power. Van Buren continued Jackson's Indian policy by forcefully removing the Indians. There were also problems on the Canadian border, particularly in New York. There was a bit of a rebellion in Canada with the British. The Canadians were running across the border to escape the British and retreating to America. The British would sometimes follow them. The Canadians were even trying to recruit people in Buffalo. They secured a steamliner called the Caroline to deliver supplies to the rebels. The British crossed the border and sank the vessel, killing 1 American. Britain claimed self-defense and accused the United States of aiding the Canadian rebels with arms and equipment. In revenge, a British ship was burnt and there was an atmosphere of war. General Winfield Scott was sent to the area to negotiate. He convinced both sides to reduce the tensions. In 1842, the Webster-Ashburton Treaty was signed, which reduced the tensions and further clarified the boundaries at the border. As in the case of Thomas Jefferson, the White House did not have a hostess. The White House hostess is usually a job that's filled by the president's wife. However, Van Buren's wife, just like Thomas Jefferson's, had died early. When his eldest son was married, his daughter-in-law, Angelica Singleton, functioned as the White House hostess. She was a distant relative of the great hostess Dolly Madison. In the election of 1840, Van Buren faced an uphill battle. The recession was the main issue, as was slavery and our expansion out west. The Whigs chose William Harrison, who was the governor of the Northwest Territories, the governor of the Indiana Territories. He was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives from Ohio, a U.S. Senator, and a minister of Grand Columbia. Although the popular vote was close, he was slaughtered in the election. Harrison got just short of 1,300,000 popular votes and 243 electoral votes. Van Buren received just over 1,100,000 votes and only received 60 electoral votes. After the election, Van Buren returned home in Kinderhook, New York. He took several trips around the country, meeting various political leaders. Van Buren was thinking about, but not yet committed to, running again for the presidency. Van Buren did run for the election in 1844, but he could not secure his party's nomination. Van Buren died on July 24th, 1862, at the age of 79 in Kinderhook, New York. At the height of his wealth, he was worth approximately $34 million in today's money. Thanks for listening.